The Story of Loki by Annie Klingensmith. One day Loki was wandering about idly, as he often did. He came near Thor's house, which had 540 rooms. By the window sat Sif, Thor's wife, asleep. Loki thought it would be a good joke to cut off her beautiful hair to make Thor angry. So he crept in softly and cut off her hair close to her head without waking her up. When Thor came home and found out what had been done, he knew at once who had done it. Rushing out, he overtook Loki and threatened to crush him to atoms. To save his life, Loki swore to get the elves to make hair of gold for Sif that would grow like real hair. Loki knew he had better do as he had promised, so he went deep down into the earth to Alfheim. When he came near, he looked through a crevice in the ground, and there were the elves at work. He could see them by the light of the forge fires. Some were running about with aprons on and with sooty faces. Some were hammering iron, and others were smelting gold. Some were cutting out rock crystals and staining them red for garnets and rubies. The elf women brought violets and the greenest grass to be found on the earth above. With these they stained crystals blue and green for sapphires and emeralds. Some of the elf women brought children's tears from the upper earth, and the gentlest elves changed them into pearls. As fast as they were finished, the jewels were carried away by the little elf boys and hidden in the ground, where they can be found to this day. If you wish to see what cunning workmen the elves were, look at the shining faces and straight edges of quartz crystals, or at the beautiful coloring of emeralds and rubies. The little elf girls crept through the earth under the ocean and gave the pearls to oysters to keep. Even now the oysters shut their shells tight and will not relinquish the pearls. Loki watched the workmen for a long time, and then he went in and told his errand. Nothing delighted the elves as much as to have work to do. They promised Loki the golden hair and at once began to make it. A little elf ran in with a handful of gold, and an old grandmother spun it into hair. As she spun, she sang a magic song to give life to the gold. At the same time, the elf blacksmiths and goldsmiths set about making a present for Loki. The blacksmiths made a spear that could never miss its mark. The goldsmiths made a ship that would sail without wind and could be folded up and placed into the owner's pocket. Loki appeared before the gods with these wonders. To Odin he gave the spear, to Freya the ship. Thor took the golden hair and placed it upon Sif's head. Immediately it began to grow. At this the gods pardoned Loki. When Loki went out, he began to boast that the sons of Ivald who had made the gifts were the best workmen in the world. Brok, an elf of another family, heard him and exclaimed angrily, "Sindri, my brother, is the best blacksmith in the whole world." Loki dared Brok to show him 3 gifts of Sindri's making equal to the spear, the ship, and the hair. Brok hastened to Sindri to tell him. The 2 brothers began the work at once. Sindri put a pig's skin into the furnace and told Brok to blow the fire with the bellows when he went out. Brok worked with a will. Loki had followed him and now changed himself into a fly and stung Brok's ear. But Brok worked steadily, never stopping to brush it off. Sindri came back and took out the pigskin, and it had become a golden pig. So bright it was that it made the cave as light as day. Then Sindri put a little piece of gold into the furnace and went back out again. Again, as Brok worked, the fly came and stung him on the nose, but the elf did not stop for a moment. When Sindri took out the gold, it had become a golden magic ring. From it, every 9th night dropped 8 golden rings. This time, Sindri brought a piece of iron and placed it into the furnace. Brok began his work. but Loki changed himself into a hornet and stung the elf on the forehead until blood ran into his eyes. Brok bore it a long time. Then he paused just for a moment to drive away the hornet. Just then his brother came in and said it was of no use to go on after he had stopped. Sindri took out the iron, and it had become the mighty hammer Mjolnir. But the handle was too short. This was because the elf had stopped when the hornet stung him. Brok took the pig, the ring, and the hammer to Asgard and presented them to the gods. Thor had just lost his hammer in a great fight with the Midgard serpent, so Mjolnir was given to him. This hammer could never be lost because it was always returned to its owner. The pig, called Golden Bristle, was given to the sun god Freya because he had to take long journeys in dark places. Odin kept the golden ring for himself. The gods voted Sindri a better blacksmith than the sons of Ivald, and Brok demanded Loki's head, which had been wagered. But the cunning Loki said he might have his head, but he must not touch his neck. So the elf did not get the head of the god Loki.